Hi Nigel, this is obviously really difficult for me, but I owe you an apology. I thought it was odd when your party announced that you were going to be at Bloomberg. I mean, you're regularly writing in newspapers, but they don't normally have a photo of you outside. And then it was with abject shame and embarrassment, actually, Nigel, that I watched the video where you explained that you'd been to Bloomberg, where you answered the accusations about Russia and your support potentially of Russia, and you put all those things to bed. I mean, in the interview, you were so clear, weren't you? Shoot down their planes, use their assets to help Ukraine. Maybe we could even help Ukraine as part of a wider UN army. And you reassured us that there were no more ties with Russia. You explained that with 100% of your heart, Nathan Gill was just the bad apple. You were no longer in awe of him. You now saw him as a bad dude. As Ed Davey pointed out though, Nigel, as great as the piece was, you still managed to say that the expansion of NATO was responsible for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And forgive this stream of consciousness, but as I'm saying that, what Ed Davey said, I'm thinking, oh gosh, maybe this was just like a planned interview to throw us off the scent. Maybe your position hadn't changed and you were just trying to fool people into thinking your position had changed. See, the interview doesn't explain why Reform didn't give a statement in 2021 when Nathan Gill was first arrested. Because it was only a couple of months earlier that Deputy Dick had been out on the campaign trail with Nathan, when he was head of Reform Wales. Which then leads me to, I'm confused why the interviewer didn't ask you why Zia Youssef had clearly said on BBC Breakfast Time that you didn't really know Nathan Gill very well. You just happened to have your picture taken with lots of people. And then they didn't ask you why, just a few weeks later, you then gave an interview going, well, yeah, I knew Nathan Gill really, really well, but I was the only senior member of Reform to know him. But Deputy Dick knew him. And your chairperson, Dr. David Bullshit, had been to Kashmir with Nathan Gill on some MEP trade trip. And they didn't ask you about Jonathan Arnott, who was also one of your MEPs, who also seemed to be spouting some pro-Putin propaganda over in the EU Parliament. Nor did they mention David Coburn, who was also one of yours and also spouting pro-Putin stuff over there. In fact, here's Coburn and Gill, who were literally on the editorial board of News 1 and 112, which was the Russian propaganda station. And they didn't ask why, in the German magazine interview, you said that you'd never met the Russian ambassador, when you demonstrably did. Mind you, your memory is apparently shocking, because there was that time that you came out of the Ecuadorian embassy. Remember when Julian Assange was in there? I mean, good luck for them, bad luck for you, but they literally had your photo coming out of the embassy. And bizarrely, when they asked you who you'd been visiting in the embassy, because the chances were, right, Julian Assange, you just couldn't remember. Then, of course, is the fact that Claire Powell, who was one of Gill's assistants, is now running in the Caerphilly by-election. Here he is with Dr. David Bullshit, who of course also knew Gill, but you're saying he didn't, and being endorsed by Mark Reckless. Here's Mark Reckless with you and Nathan Gill. I mean, there's also the irony, Nigel, isn't there, that Nathan Gill was standing up pretending to be speaking about the freedom of press and how it was outrageous that Ukraine were trying to shut down the 2 Russian propaganda stations. Yet you've said nothing about the American journalists that have all given back their press passes to the Pentagon because your mate Donald is also trying to censor what they say. And why didn't the journalist ask you, so that you could put all of this to bed once and for all, why was Oleg Voloshin, who was the guy that actually paid Nathan Gill for the Russians, why is he reposting the stuff that you used to say that was really anti-EU? Noting, of course, that being anti-EU would weaken the EU and therefore play into Putin's hands. And he didn't just do it a couple of times. Here he is reposting you when you're talking about George Soros, which of course is one of the greatest bits of disinformation and the most effective bits of disinformation that Putin ever put out there. And I guess there were other questions that I'm surprised they didn't ask, like why, after Isabel Oakeshott naming Aaron Banks as potentially being used by the Russians, did you then put him forward as a mayoral candidate for Reform for Bristol this year? Do you know, now that I've gone through all of that, Nigel, I'm going to have to retract my apology. I do think that potentially it was just an interview which was undertaken, which allowed people like Tim Montgomery and Nadine Dorries and all the rest of them to just repost the interview to make us think that your position on Putin had changed. Oh no, that is disappointing. Ah well, good chat, as you were.